Hey everybody, this is Ben with NatureLink, and I want to welcome you to the FireKeepers Global Conference, in which we will gather for powerful conversations with cutting-edge experts and thought leaders who will guide you to connect to your truest self and activate your natural gifts. This event is designed to reinstate the importance of carrying our soul-directed vision back into our communities so that ourselves and our communities will flourish. Here you are invited to learn how to seek the guidance of your inner voice so that you can truly understand what it means to live life to your highest purpose. I'm here today with Gent Stone. Gent was raised around ceremony. Specifically, he has worked with Native American elders who have taught him how to perform Inipi Sweat Lodge Ceremonies, Firewalks, Vision Quests, Chanunpa Sacred Pipe, sun dances, as well as many other sacred medicine ceremonies. Gent has carried a sacred pipe for 30 years and facilitates many healing ceremonies with the community. Gent also has a PhD in Biomedical Science from UCSF and is currently furthering his education and working in the field of Bioinformatics and Data Science. Gent also collaborates with many clinicians, including MAPS and other psychedelic integration therapists and adjunct care providers. He is working diligently to educate the community on best practices for use of sacred plant medicines, as well as harm reduction, and is working with others to lead decriminalization efforts across the country. Welcome, Gent. And I'm happy to talk with you today.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me here.
You're more than welcome. And I am very, very curious and also really excited at what you're going to be talking about today, where you've listed a topic today of setting practical intentions and integration of sacred ceremony. And when you're saying the word intentions and integration, one of the questions I wanted to ask of you is, why do you believe intentions should be practical?
Yeah, well, I guess it's best to explain this with examples. So I've been in ceremonies, had people come to ceremonies where and specifically, I'm thinking of like grandfather peyote ceremonies, but intentions are really important in all ceremonies, whether it's something like a pipe ceremony or just a simple drumming circle, but as well throughout our life, right? We call it goals, usually, goal setting and having a purpose, right? And being clear on where we're going forward, as opposed to what I call rear view driving, right? Or rear view mirror driving, where we're always looking in the past as opposed to being clear about where we're going. But so practical intentions. So I've heard intentions, and I don't want to knock anybody's intentions. These are beautiful intentions, and they might be exactly where some people are at. I've never found myself to be this profoundly woke, but some folks are. So I've heard intentions like, I want to be one with the universe, right? I want to understand and connect with Christ consciousness. I want Creator to show me, the fullness of who I am, right? These are huge, profound questions. And while they're amazing intentions, and I'm sure some people are in the place where they can take that on, I find most of the time folks come in with that intention, and then when we're talking at the end of the ceremony, the things that they share really have nothing to do with what their really original intention was. And sometimes when we walk away, sometimes when we come in having these profound goals and aspirations for what our intentions for what we want to take away from ceremony, and that doesn't happen, we might not ever admit it to ourselves, but part of us feels let down, or part of us feels, like we failed in some way. And what I find is that we're much more likely to continue with something if we succeed in it, right? So if we make small practical goals, intentions for ourselves in our daily practice, in our daily life, and in ceremony, no matter what the ceremony is, we're more likely to continue with that daily practice, those ceremonies, those things that transform our lives, that further us in where we're wanting to go in our lives. And really, we just learn so much more that way. It's similar in my mind to something like multitasking, right? A lot of people multitask nowadays, right? Drive, text, this, that, the other, right? And what I find is what we're really doing is 2, 3, 4, how many ever things we choose to do at once, just half as well, a third as well, a fourth as well, depending on, right, how many in number of things we choose to do at once. So for me, it's about focus, it's about clarity, and from there, we're much more likely to succeed in what we're wanting to do. So, and that's why I chose, the topic that I did, because this is really huge for us right now in the work that we do at Sacred Wisdom Circles, and we also have a Medicine Journeys program and work with a couple of different Native American churches and other earth-based indigenous spiritual organizations, is really working with people before they ever come to ceremony to get really clear on intention, and then staying clear. It doesn't mean we have to stick with that one specific intention only, but staying clear that the direction that that person goes in during ceremony is related to that original intention. And it may shift completely to some other, maybe even unrelated or seemingly unrelated place during the ceremony. However, usually that original intention will help manifest wherever that goes. But what we don't want is for folks to just kind of squander and struggle, and that's where folks have, that's where, here another example comes in. Kids who, want to play with, spiritual medicines. Oh, my buddy got me some mushrooms. Let's go try them, right? And they're just hanging out together, watching TV, and do mushrooms and have a bad trip, right? Or kids playing just with all kinds of choices that they make out of randomness or just to kind of have fun, and then end up having, a less than profound experience, and sometimes really horrid, terrible experiences. And what I might say is that working in ceremony brings us to the depth of ourselves, and so the chances of having a really hard experience are already pretty great. So we want to mitigate, the harm or trauma that might come from that as much as possible. And the best way to do that is to really get clear with ourselves, um, and especially, in regards to our intention and what we're seeking by doing that powerful spiritual ceremony. And then the second part of that is what I talked about in my title, the integration, right? So integrating the work that we do afterward. And part of that is, again, being clear with our intention, and after the ceremony, having a daily practice where we're regularly coming back to that original intention, who we were before the ceremony, the experience of the ceremony, and what we can learn from and extract from that experience going forward. And that entire process is really, really important. It's not just about the 6 hours or 12 hours or sometimes days, right, in vision quests, like, um, that it that experience is, that, I mean, there's actually understandings that have come to me 30 years after a ceremony, right? So I've had a vision, or some um, awareness, and the meaning of that came to me literally 30 years later. Um, so it's a lifelong process. But the more that we really focus um, our intent and have this daily practice that I spoke to, um, will really increase what we get out of our experience. And I think, most people have had that awareness in all aspects of their life at some point. So
Yeah, really, really well said. And I liked how you how your explanation on intention and like that's so important. I think a lot of us forget that we're more expected on the of course the outcome. That's just how we are as human.
right.
Like I
Yeah.
see it all the time in actually my programs, and then like hear about it and you read about it and other people's vision quest programs, and people are like, oh, I really want to lament for a vision, I need to cry, and I'm going to come out with this, and this is what I'm working on. And of course they come out
Yeah.
more confused, and like that's not what I wanted, but it's something so much
Mm-hmm.
more. And like you're saying, like you have signs and or omens or indicators, whatever words you want to use, that show up years later. Like you said, 30 years later. I think I have one time. It's like 8 years later, but still, it's so visceral. It's so powerful
Yeah.
when intention is done correctly. Um,
Yeah.
and you kind of hinted to it a little bit about the techniques and like kind of in your background and skills. But for the speakers who are watching who probably don't know as much of the skills and techniques that y'all offer to bring out those intentions into the
Mm-hmm.
integration, like what techniques do you use in Pacific program?
Sure. Sure. So before anybody comes to a ceremony, we ask them to submit some information, fill out some questionnaires, and a lot of folks do that usually with a health questionnaire or things like that. But we really want to know what's, first of all, bringing you to ceremony. We want to hear the history, and so even though some people might feel like they are really clear on their intention and they'll speak to that specifically, you know, we like to get to know folks, their history, how they grew up, because we believe, tribal, what we call tribal energy, greatly influences who we are and how we think, right? Um, our consciousness, our awareness, our understanding of life is based off from what we learned and what we were taught growing up, and and to shift and expand that, um, it's important to first know where we're starting from. So we spend a lot of time with that, and then we have some of our own ideas and our understandings, which we definitely bring into it. But we prefer to allow spirit, or the nebulous, or maybe even random chance, and then folks' um, connection to that randomness to start bringing up some ideas. So, for example, we use things like medicine cards, and I don't know if you know what those are, but basically they're cards that have different animals on them, and then different animals traits, and it's something that, and there's a number of different sets of them, and this is something that somebody wrote up and created these cards. And when my mom first started using them, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is This is okay. All right, Mom. Because I grew up going to, really traditional style ceremonies, right? I mean, I was a sun dancer and it was hardcore. It was Four Nations um, you know, and they don't really have anything like that. Although they do talk about spirit animals and, watching the animals and watching their traits. And what I realized is, you know, it, over time, reading these cards is, wow, it really does connect to what, indigenous peoples or anybody that observes these animals over time, uh, the character traits and how you might anthropomorphize that to ourselves is pretty spot on. But what I realized more important than any of that is it's, and I know people, read their horoscopes, and some people are really into astrology and all these kind of things. And even when it comes to philosophy, because I'm not really a philosopher, like like I said, I like practical, right? How can I do this so that it impacts this, so that I can reach this goal, right? How's it going to change my life so that I'm a better person, so I'm a better dad, so I'm a better husband, right? But what I realized was these medicine cards, these visions that come to us, these experiences, it may be just our interpretation of, what it all means. And it probably is, right? For the most part, and some whisperings from spirit. But what matters is what we take away from that, and then what we do with that, and how that influences how we move forward and shift in our lives, right? So it doesn't matter if it's, cards or whether it's tarot or any of these things. What matters is what we can take away from that. And what matters is that we're looking inside of ourselves, right? Deeply, and opening our minds to ourselves and seeing where we can shift, where we can grow, and how we can move forward. So, we use some tools like that. But, and my mom, she was a social worker for years and years, and she did a lot of these um, transformational workshops and things like that. She worked for some, and so she learned a lot of skills, team building, trust exercises, empowering exercises, things like that. And so even though, um, like I said, I learned traditional ceremony, we've incorporated a lot of these other types of activities into the program that we do. And so we have this kind of a holistic, eclectic blend of activities and exercises that we do to really support people in the work we do. So, for example, even when I'm doing a medicine ceremony, a peyote ceremony, which usually starts in the evening at sunset and it goes all night until sunrise. Um, Before we go into that teepee and do that ceremony, folks will come. I almost always do them on Saturday night now, and folks will come early the day of, and we'll do a pipe ceremony and just sit there, and everybody will get to share, right? We build trust with one another. People get to share their intentions, kind of work those intentions, massage them, see how folks can't hone in and be a little more clear with them. And then we take a little break, and then we'll do a breath ceremony, like a holotropic breath ceremony, to help people really tap into their bodies and kind of ground that intention in. A lot of times, more will come out of that, and we can massage that intention a little bit more. And then eventually, as we approach dusk, then everybody prepares themselves, and then we go in and have the all night ceremony. And we didn't always do that, right? Sometimes people would just show up. We hadn't talked to them beforehand, and we'd go in and do this profound, medicine ceremony, and then we'd say, see you later, and everybody would leave, and that was it. And that really that's really not the best way to do things. And we learned it that way because when you grow up on the reservation or grow up in a small close-knit tribe, that's how things are done, because everybody already knows each other. And then afterward, people are there and nearby to support each other, right? But when folks don't have a tribe to go back to, right? Instead, they go back to their hectic workaday life, the life that really led them to want to go to a ceremony in the first place. Then that's kind of traumatic and a letdown. So now what we do is all of those things that I mentioned ahead of time, but as well we have weekly calls, conference calls, and we actually have a couple every week on different days, so that folks can come call in, and one's 45 minutes long and the other's an hour and a half, and folks can call in and share their experience, share how they've been integrating their experience, and we can work on that. And then of course we also have, we're available for one-on-one calls and counseling with people as well. But I have folks who've gone to ceremony with us, and 2 years later they're still calling in every week to these calls. And those are the folks that really make the biggest shifts and changes in themselves and their lives. So that entire process is really, really important. And then we have what we call our 13th Moon program as well, that we, especially if folks are going to do like a vision quest or something really profoundly life-changing like that, we ask people to prepare for an entire year or more in advance. So our 13th Moon program is 52 lessons. One comes out every week for a year. Now we even have a second year of this program, which is a large monthly lesson for those people who want to go on and in our program. But the reason we have broke these lessons up into weekly lessons is because then it assures that people are at least coming to this awareness, putting their focus here on this work, this inner work, at least once a week, right? We encourage people to have a daily practice, even if it's just meditation or a short little whatever, prayer, focus, something that they do every day to call themselves, to call their focus back to their intention and this work. But these lessons, we really encourage people to, like I said, get on them as far in advance before they come to a ceremony or one of our circles or events as they can, and then to continue with those afterward. So, and then, like I say, we have people who already, have gone through that program and done the exercises and activities that are in them, 2 years in a row now. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I love how you integrate the 13th Moon program, like the long term one, but even for people who can call in like twice a week, you're saying that's so beneficial.
Yeah.
Like if I was a participant, that would be something I would really appreciate, like that community, like going in with a community instead of just feeling like you're going in by yourself. Like if you're preparing for something or you're working integration after your program, I love that. That's really, excuse me. That's just, that can be really powerful. I can see that being very beneficial for your participants.
Yeah. Yeah, our hope. So we also have a teaching program, teaching the teachers program. So a lot of people who want to do this work take it into their communities, and so we've had hundreds of people now that have participated in that, and a number of individuals who have completed a multi-year process there. And eventually our goal is to have, people all across the United States and even eventually across the world who have their own local communities. So if folks come and, do a large event with us, they they go back to whatever region they're in, and we say, oh, we have, so and so who's out there. Um, and really, we could probably do that now. There's enough people like yourself and others who are doing this kind of work or something related to it, that we can create networks. We like to call it the mycelial network. Create networks so that folks know, there's somebody in every city out there that you can connect with, and and while they may not have experienced, the exact same ceremony that you did, their hearts are in the same place. They're like-minded individuals, and you can reach out to them, for support. And yeah, that's really important. And whether it's men's group, women's group, mixed groups, whether it's just a drumming circle, or potluck, or it's a sweat lodge, or this, that, or the other. Yeah, whether it's just getting together for a solstice, or whatever it might be, really, really important. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I liked your imagery on the mycelium. That's kind of funny. I was actually,
Yeah.
as you're saying that, I was thinking something going out. That's actually a great name, the Mycelium
Mm-hmm.
Guide Network. There you go. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're that's why so I'm really encouraging people to join uh you know I mean, not everybody's interested in working with psychedelics, but you know, we have a lot of folks who go to indigenous ceremonies, and they've had that experience. Or so I turn them on to MAPS. I was never really interested in MAPS, which is kind of this medical association. It's clinicians who are interested in psychedelic integration, and not all of them are interested in working with psychedelics with their patients. But there's, you know, no matter what you, no matter what your belief is about it, there's tons of people out there that work with psychedelics, right? And there's tons of people out there that have had experiences with, you know, other things that we don't consider psychedelics, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, things like that, right? And even just, um, if we have trauma in our lives, PTSD, have had dealt with emotional abuse, these kind of things, or just have familial dynamics, or other types of dynamics that aren't the best, it's really good to have networks of people who understand how to work with those folks, right? And but I bring up psychedelics especially because it's has been stigmatized and is illegal in this country, and yet there's this huge underground network of people who are turning to it because they see the positive benefits that come from working with these plant medicines. There's millions of people that have gone south to the Amazon to work with ayahuasca. There's lots of people in this country and elsewhere who've worked with psilocybin and peyote and these other medicines. And there's lots of young people out there who kind of toy with these things and play around with them, and they're not meant to be played around with. So it is important that we raise awareness, not only about how to work with people who've had these experiences, but also just work with people who are doing healing work, um, in any way, right? Mental health is something that's stigmatized, or any kind of lack of mental health, let me say, is stigmatized, to the point where you know people feel ashamed to even reach out and go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or mental health professionals. And that's why we see, part of why we see so many people that come to ceremony is because they feel like, maybe if they do it in ceremony, it doesn't seems so like something's wrong with them, right?
Yeah.
And the other part of it is also people, yeah, and the other part of it is people really want to connect with the earth as well, right? So part of what's created um, what some might call this mental health crisis. I mean, we have more um, young people, not just in total numbers, but a larger percentage of our young people committing suicide, and finding themselves in a place where they have depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation, and just feeling
Mhm.
either ostracized or just displaced from society already as it is, right? And part of that is our separation from one another, right? All of our square houses have square fences around them that separate us now. But um, you know, that's part of it. But also just not being on the earth, right? Not being out in nature, um, having food that kind of seems displaced from what real food is, those kind of things, and and all of that adds up. So I see more and more, so many people reaching out and trying to, connect with others, um, connect with like-minded individuals, and to return to our roots, right? I mean, we evolved from the earth, and so we have a connection there, and we will always, I believe, need that for our full full health. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely love how you are pulling in maps, which is,
mhm.
I think, something like if you're a guide or even people in this in rites of passage work are kind of forgetting. And I'm seeing that a lot with friends who are guides, and also like sometimes in other programs that I've been a part of is you have these people who um, they're doing great work, but they're not aware of like the mental health that's going on in the background. And then like I think that's so important to have that support. And with plant medicine, like like you were saying, like young people just kind of going and feeling safe, or like feel like it's normal.
Yeah,
Like if it's in a ceremony, I can do this. And so I was actually talking to a friend a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I feel like he's like, I did peyote for the first time just the other day, and my first question was like, why? And he's like he just
yeah,
do it, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, it's like, okay, man. Like he was a friend, so like trying to like not get on his bad side, but I was just kind of like, first thing I was coming to mind too is like, well, like, um, making sure like he's in a safe place to do that, but also, yeah, that ceremony piece is huge, and like while we're doing peyote and like or like these sacred plant medicines, and like there's a reason behind that and how it works, and if it's structured correctly, then so I love how you're pulling that into your work. I can it's very very empowering for me to hear that you are doing
yeah,
that. Um,
yeah. It's super important. And I mean, being a scientist, to me, it's important that while it's important that we have evidence-based determinants of how we do things, right? And if you look at um, culturally and traditionally how things were done, right? They were set up and done because um, a lot of them will say, the spirits or the spirits of the plants came and told us, to do it this way, right? There's always a story about how, Creator sent somebody, a messenger, and told them to do that this way. But if you look at how it's done traditionally, that was set up with a structure for a very specific reason. Then it creates safety and creates, a container to assure that people are safe, and that the healing work that's meant to be done there occurs. And so it's not this randomness, and a lot of that's why um, I have, these clinicians who have invited me to, be like on their panels or in their discussions because they know, that the traditional ways that that the traditional ways um, that done were done for a reason, and so they take a lot of that into their own, practice and how they shape how they work with people, and yeah, so it's super important, and we learn a lot from them. My first psychedelic society meeting that I went to, I thought it was just going to be stuffy clinicians who had never worked with the plant medicines themselves and were coming from this very sterile clinical place with it. And that was not the case at all, right? They're really um, coming at it from, a knowledgeable, um, but also heartfelt place. And, they understood that we're not just physical beings and mental beings, but we're, spiritual and emotional beings as well. And, and and yeah, every talk I've ever heard on this really, people connected with that, and so yeah, so it's beautiful work to have what people might call both sides, coming together. But I realize, it isn't about sides. We don't have separate sides, um, and or we all have the same common goal. We just might go about it a little bit differently. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's like one of my teachers would always say like there's no right answer or there's actually no answer, and he would just always say that. And for years I'd be like, what the hell is he talking about? But he's just kind of saying like the answer's already there, and it's already just been repeated over and over again,
yeah,
kind of hinting to like that old
yeah,
saying like the answer is you. Um,
yeah,
it's just beautiful work also too, like what you're saying earlier with plant medicine and just how sacred it actually is, and how we're finally getting to that point to realize that, and not just using it for, like you're saying, for research and random self use, that it's so much deeper than that. And like in your case, like
yeah,
you're building community behind that, which is just so amazing. And I kind of had like um, one last kind of like big question, not really like a loaded question. I guess it
mm,
could be a little bit loaded question, um, just because we're kind of getting to the top of the hour here. But
sure,
would you mind kind of expounding on, like, if I'm like a listener who, watching this video for mostly for our listeners, like how to prepare for one of like a specific ceremony that y'all offer. Like maybe you can take us through like how to prepare for the ceremony, like what practices would you suggest before coming into the ceremony, and then like the integration period, like how you follow up. Would that be helpful?
sure,
That might be helpful for
yeah,
our listeners because y'all offer so much beautiful work, but maybe we could just use one of the ceremonies and kind of give somebody an idea
mm,
a little bit.
sure. Well, I guess I could talk a little bit more about the intention, because really that is the crux, the focus, the most important thing that's that somebody wants to work on before they come to any of our ceremonies, right? So why am I doing this ceremony? You talked about, your buddy who worked with peyote, or sounds more like played with peyote, and you were like, why? And if one can't answer that, right? If one can't answer that, you probably don't want to be doing it, right? Which is how it probably should be with everything that we do in life, right? If you can't answer why you're doing it, you might not want to be doing it. And so, yeah, so we do have some activities, but honestly, really, um, I've and I mentioned this 13th Moon program, which, goes over kind of indigenous ceremonial culture and those teachings. If you read Black Elk or, the Sacred Pipe, or, any of the books on Lakota or other Native American spirituality, you'll know a lot of what our 13th Moon training program is about. But also we couple those teachings as a way to look inside of ourselves, right? What is your own tribal energy? How were you raised? What are your beliefs? How do you view the world? How do you view yourself? How do you view your abilities in the world, right? So all of our activities are designed to get us looking at ourselves and who we are as an individual, and an individual in this world that we have. But honestly, I spend a few hours speaking with people, on the phone, or in person, usually on the phone, because people come from a distance, and like I said, looking at who they are, and if they've done some of at least our introductory lessons, our 4 introductory lessons, they'll really have started fleshing this out. And then we kind of go a little deeper, and then I focus. I offer some suggestions. So, one, set your intention such that it's positively worded. So instead of, like people will say, oh, I want to get rid of my fear. I have a lot of fear and anxiety. What I suggest is, I ask, what is the opposite of fear and anxiety? If you didn't have fear and anxiety, what would you have, right? Because what I don't want people to focus on is where they've been, right? I called that this rear view mirror driving. So I don't want them to focus on what the problem is, because anybody who rides a motorcycle knows if you see an object like a rock up ahead of you, you don't stare at the rock, because if you stare at the rock, you're going to hit the rock. Where you look is where you want to go, right? So I want their intention to be focused on where they want to get, right? So confident, powerful, whatever is the opposite of anxiety for them. And so we spend a lot of time, just shaping the wording of that intention, um, and then having them claim it. So I like folks to frame it in an I am statement, right? As you're taking ownership of that, right? And even if they don't fully feel that, the goal is that by the end of the ceremony, or at some point soon after, they're going to really step into that and fully own whatever that phrase is that they're setting as their intention. So we spend a lot of time focusing on intention before they ever come. And so again, I think that's the key thing, is looking at that intention, and there, if folks have some really specific concerns or some specific things, I might give them some specific exercises to do to help them. Like if they're really not getting it, just in our communication, I might have them do some activities or some specific exercises, at home, and see what comes up for them. People will often talk about dreams, or certain experiences that kind of stood out as being profound, and we'll have them delve more into that, see how that's influenced why they're coming to that, or why they're feeling called to do that specific ceremony. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
hope that answers your question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was well said. Yeah, intention. um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's like it was just kind of funny. I was thinking back on the word intention, and something my dad used to say when I was little. He was big on, he still is big on intention, and he would always say,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of a goofy little saying. I don't know where it might have just been him. He was always saying one-liners. He's like, make sure your intention comes with attention. And I'd always just kind of laugh at that
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of saying like make sure you're conscious of the intention that you're actually doing, like kind of like re-questioning and
Yeah.
asking yourself again and again, like, is this what I'm intended to do? But that always stuck with me. It was just
Yeah.
kind of silly saying, but it makes sense. And um,
No, that's a profound saying. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think the much, well, I don't want to I don't want to say the majority of people do anything, but a lot of times in life, we go through life just acting out of kind of this automated place, right? Not really conscious necessarily of why we're doing certain things. And the more mindful, and that's what mindfulness practice is all about, right? Being aware of our experience and what we're doing. One, so that we can just enjoy it and experience it more fully, but two, so that we can be more conscious about the choices we make and where we end up. So yeah, beautiful.
yeah,
Your dad was pretty smart.
yeah, he's a smart dude. Yeah, hopefully you can watch all these interviews. One thing I was
Yeah,
going to touch base on before we close out here, and I think you kind of summed it up really well with intention, kind of starting with intention and ending with intention, which is great. So I think you kind of answered the last of those questions. But one one thing I did want to ask at the very beginning, but hopefully it won't go down another one of our like a rabbit hole or anything, is
sure.
the way you focused on community earlier and building community behind all this ceremony and like bringing in indigenous wisdom to this modern practice is um is not only special, but we didn't talk too much about like how you're raised. Like remember you were saying like in your bio, like you're raised with ceremony, like your mom, like laughing about your mom with
Hmm.
the cards, and how you still
Sure.
and you bring in like a lot of her knowledge. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, in your with your ancestors and of your community, like being raised in that, like how do you use that? I think you kind of hinted a little bit to it, like how do you use this ancestral work to help people kind of find those elders, or if they don't have parents, or how to use their parents for the younger generation to like carry the
Yeah.
work.
Hmm. Yeah. So unless it's a specific men's group, all of our ceremonies, we have the male and the female energy, and we have the youth and the elders, right? So young people, my kids have been in these ceremonies since they were babies, right? Sweat lodge, peyote ceremony, whatever, right? And usually if it's all night peyote ceremony, they just about midnight they're falling asleep behind me, whatever, right? Wrapped up in their blanket or whatever. So, um, but yeah, so it's all about having the family there in ceremony, right? And I really appreciated like what you were talking about with the work that you're doing, like bringing these young people together and then having their families there and having that connection, so important. And not just their immediate family, right? But their grandparents and other relatives. Um, people come and they come with their best friends and things like that. And then our ceremonies, we always have, or we're doing our best to always have, a native elder there, right? So we've had people who are Ute and Hopi and Lakota, come and teach the people and lead ceremony. And this is not, um, it's funny. I when I was younger, I mean, I knew I was white and looked like everybody else, but my mom would always say, "You were born in the wrong century," So because I wanted to always be outside and I wanted, I loved Native American lore, but cultural appropriation and pretendians, that's a big thing, right? And as well, you see a lot of folks out doing ceremony and they have a lot of wealth, or wealth compared to those people who are on the reservations, right? And and that's not what this that's that's just playing a part, right? And if you're not connected with the people and the entire community, or if I'm only going to work with these people, right? I see people who only work with people with money, or who can pay, to come and do things. That's not what it's about, right? Um, we never charge for a ceremony, right? We ask folks if they're able to contribute. This is what our expenses are, and if you can contribute, that's great. But we never ever turn anybody away for lack of ability to pay, and we always reach out to, those groups and those people who are often overlooked. And I mean, there's a saying in a Lakota saying, mitakuye oyasin, which means we are all related, right? We are all one. And if you think about it, the carbon that flows through us and makes our body is carbon that's been in, how many thousands of other organisms, before us. Maybe it was in a dinosaur, at some point, a cockroach, a mouse, in a tree, right? We are all related, and no one of us is more important, or there's no hierarchical scale of importance here. We're all interdependent in many ways, and so that's strong in our teachings, strong in what we were taught, and strong in how we like to run things. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So,
And it's such a beautiful saying, and it's like those words. Like I remember the first time I heard those words, like I didn't even have to even know what it meant. It just sounds so beautiful, like the way it's, excuse me, the way it's pronounced. And
yeah.
look, I always just marveled at Lakota lore and like just the way they phrase things. Phrase things. It's just so
Yeah.
when you read the words and or hear it. And that was beautifully said on your end. So thank you for that. And
Yeah.
and I feel like what you just said too, like really closed out our interview. But is there anything else you want to kind of add that you're feeling that we've missed or haven't touched base on?
Um, no, I just really appreciate your doing this and the work that you do, and all the other speakers. I appreciate that people are seeking, this work, just looking at themselves, and there's no right way, right? There's not. I see this a lot of times. I mean, people have preferences, but there's no reason to say, well, my way is better, and that way is silly, or whatever. Um, whether somebody's Christian, or this religion, or this um, way of thinking, you know, they're all good ways, and what's really important is that we're connecting, that we are able to set aside our differences, and look at those common threads that weave us together, and look at those things that are um, most important, which is protecting our Mother Earth here, our planet that we live on, and bringing people together, um, sharing when we have common experiences, and sharing from a heartfelt and genuine place. So
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. And like this, and like our vision, like when we go, like that resonates with me a lot because I'm big on like when I'm looking at this work, like we all have these vision, our own vision and our purpose, but we want other people to see that, but they never will. Like we're us. We just need to share it in a way that
yeah,
people will just listen and embody that with us, but then not really use words. We're always trying to use words. It's like I was saying this actually in a previous interview. One of my mentors would always say, like, when you come come back from this experience, and when like when you may have found the answer that you're living your life with now, words will never what do you say? Yeah, words will never actually help you answer the other people's questions that they're going to ask to you. Like, your job is to just model that and show that new essence, because that's all we can do. Just share that essence, share that that love, and then people really see us for who we are. And so we're always, in our society in America, of course, we're all stuck on words. Like he said that, and like my question too is like, what did they do though? Like you're saying earlier, like, go through this, but they're not doing anything. Make sure that we're actually applying this. It's huge. But that could be a whole other interview.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, why is it important that we come together?
Yeah, exactly. And intention, and just come back to that word you mentioned earlier, intention. It's huge. Well, that kind of sums up for the interview today. And do you want to expound a little bit on the free gift offering that you're offering to our listeners?
Oh yeah, sure. Yep. So I talked about the 13th Moon program, and so just anybody who comes to our site, either sacredwisdomcircle.org or SWCNAC, it's an abbreviation for Sacred Wisdom Circle Native American Church.org. So SWCNAC.org. You come there, go to the registration page, and if you just register for the newsletter, we'll make sure we get you the first lesson of the 13th Moon program. So you can check that out, see if it resonates with you, see if you're interested in learning more about it, and then, if it does, then we can make the full program available to you. Our call-ins, any of what we do, it's you have lifetime access. You can join those calls at any time, and so it's the first lesson of the 13th Moon program. So
awesome. And just for the listeners that haven't looked at it yet, I was actually just looking at it before Jen and I were talking, and it's pretty amazing. I think I'm going to be on one of the calls soon. And all that you just mentioned for the listeners can be found on the FireKeepers Summit landing page underneath your little face and your icon. In their bio, you'll see the free gift URL, and as well as like the description behind all that, and find out a little bit more on the website there. But I just want to thank you so much for talking with me today, and that was just profound yet very empowering, and just thank you for sharing your wisdom for all of us to just know more on what you're doing, but also in this work of ceremony.
You're welcome, and thank you. We're all students, all teachers, so we're learning from one another. So yeah,
exactly. Well, thank you so much, and
all right.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. You too. Have a good night. All right. Bye, everybody.